2024, everyone. Congratulations for making it this far. Gentle reminder before we start, do not forget to time yourself. I unfortunately will not be able to provide a timer. So yeah, time yourself and your opponent as well for POI. Also mention your POI preference. Any POI preference that is not mentioned will be defaulted into raise hand or chat. Please do not badger the speaker. Lastly, mention your preference for pronouns if you would like to. Any observers that want to observe, also remember to rename yourself to be identifiable. Without any further ado, with the motion given the opportunity to leave the country, this House would stay, calling PM to open the debate. Here.
Hi, am I audible?
Can you speak closer?
Hi, am I audible?
Okay, it's loud and clear.
Okay, POI is just through chat. Please do not unmute and don't badger. Surprised to be here in the grand finals, but yeah, hope this is gonna be a fun debate. I'm gonna start my speech in a 3, 2, 1. 5 points of crucial characterization before I get into my argument. First, you're likely a progressive individual in a conservative state. You're privileged and view minorities that get discriminated against every day. I think if your life goals is partially to help minorities, you probably had first-hand experience with people or communities, and this is something you feel strongly about. Hence why it's probably likely something from childhood or somebody who feels important to you. That's why you actually have this goal in mind. Reading this means that it's very near and dear to your heart. Second, likely you want to move somewhere progressive like the US or EU, seeing that this person is a progressive individual and originate likely from countries where discrimination is rampant and likely is in a country that is like third world or just other places that are not as progressive as the location where you are in. Third, we think that you are a young individual with your life set in this state that you are born in and privileged there because you're not a minority. Probably means you probably have parents who are able to get you jobs or get you connections to very important people and have your all your relationships within that state. Fourth, I think it's likely not an easy decision for you to choose to go abroad where the capital or money or whatever is difficult for you to choose, because if it were that easy for you, you'd probably have done so already. This decision then probably means that it's probably crucial, final, and likely done when you are young, hence why you have some sort of confidence in your prospects in the overseas job market to be able to believe you'll be able to find a job there. Last, we can see that this person probably does have dreams of live abroad, but will explain to you in my argument why opting to fulfill in the dream of like helping minorities within their country, helping like change the lives of very few individuals in a worst case scenario will be better than moving abroad to fulfill your selfish trajectory of making your life quote unquote so much better. If we can prove to you that we fulfill the incentives of the individual and make it likely to do so on our side of the house, you should vote for OG. I'm going to forward to you one argument with 30 layers in this debate. Firstly, this argument is going to be about fulfillment. Why exactly are you unlikely to fulfill your dreams of moving abroad and fixing your life trajectories when you're on side opposition? 3 points. First, I think we have to be aware that we're not living in a utopia, and instead we're living in the 21st century where economics or like the stock market and whatever is essentially in shambles like every few years, where right wings are rising everywhere to the extent where it's probably harmful for you as a progressive individual to go anywhere that is not your home country. For job opportunities, especially for diaspora people who are living abroad, who are seen as immigrants, are at an all-time low. This means that likely what's going to happen is that in the best case scenario, you're likely like super smart a graduate of like a top university of your country, and you decide to go overseas, you're probably going to become a low-collar worker with no impact since you're stuck in a corporate job. Sure, you get money, but you will not feel any happiness or have time to do something else. Or in the worst case scenario, probably fail to find a job, become homeless, have to go back home with like nothing in your hand, and just feel yourself like crumble with the idea of what you could have been and how you would fail to become that. Second, we think that discrimination because of different biases or just the fact that you are from a different country moving to the country with a complete different set of norms is probably going to happen. You're going to be forced to fit into society, forced to change yourself socially, and as an individual who probably is used to feeling a lot of privilege, a lot of favor within their lives since childhood, you probably will not be used to discrimination. You'll feel you're going to feel unhappy, you're going to feel really unhappy with where you are and fail to feel any sort of fulfillment because you see this type of discrimination happening towards you, especially when you're still not used to it. But thirdly, we think when you go overseas, you're probably understanding you'll not be able to make an impact. And when this realization sets on you, exactly because I tell you that making an impact is something that was probably like put into their lives, or like an idea that was put into them from like a very young age, it will probably set on them and make them feel so much regret and make them wonder every single day whether or not they made the right decision. So even if they become like a CEO, become like a third, like the best person at that country, or the richest person in their country, they'll probably realize that they left people behind in their original country and probably should have not moved away. Second layer then, why, even if you fulfill your dream, become like the richest person in that country, increasing your life trajectory, whatever, you will still feel unfulfilled. Three layers here. First, we think that dream was likely unrealistic and based on whatever perception you had of that area, country, city, whatever, from like media or whatever you read about it when you were young. Likely when you read about something, you see something on media, on social media, that's when you see only the good parts of it, and reality will set in when you feel dumb and irrational for choosing to go over there just because of what you see. We think no matter how much research you do, you will never be able to prepare yourself for what it's like living overseas. This is why me moving overseas for university is so different from what I thought it was. Exactly because you cannot get the information that you need about everything in that area just from reading or watching some YouTube videos. But second, even if that's not true, we think that you'll likely miss your friends and family exactly because you're an individual, a human being that has social ties and does like to spend time with people that you find meaningful. That's very likely hard to combat, especially when it is probably a big decision because you have limited capital when you want to live abroad and fix your life trajectory, quote unquote. You'll still miss these people when they're like, let's say, having like big life things happen, let's say getting married, wedding anniversaries, like reaching 50. These are all things and life achievements that you will never be able to like relive, and you'll always have to miss these types of things, and it's going to be very, very harmful for your mental state on opposition side of the house. But thirdly, we think deep down you probably still do want to make changes, exactly, but since you'll not be able to, you are the minority in this situation. You'll probably think, and like exactly because you feel so strong about minorities, whenever you feel discrimination, you're probably gonna think back to the time when you were in your country, when you were able to make changes for minorities, but chose not to do so. It will haunt you for the rest of your life. We think it's ultimately not gonna get you any fulfillment. Last layer then, why exactly are you likely to be fulfilled on government side of the house? Fourth thing, first, I think you're going to have connection with privileged people to the extent where you likely will be able to make changes, will be able to make nonprofit organizations, NGOs, and whatnot, to the extent where you'll be able to make changes for minorities, as to make policies in the best case scenario when you like talk to your friends who are politicians. But second, we think even if that's not true, even if you don't have like connections to like the most privileged people, the most like the people who are on the top of your country, you likely will still have a better chance to make changes. What does that mean? It means that probably as a privileged individual, you likely have the ability to opt into politics, something that minorities who often get discriminated against within your home country will likely not have the ability to, or even if they can become politicians, it will probably hurt your heart seeing that they are unable to get further in the political sphere than you, and that's why you want to opt into politics to change policies and make things better. But third, even if you cannot make any policies, you cannot change any policies, we think you're still going to feel more fulfillment. Because even if you have like 30 small people who just want to go to college overseas by funding them with your funds from that country, or just like make a safe space for like 10 marginalized individuals, make a small community to live their dreams, I think it's still going to make you feel happier than not making changes at all and living a selfish life overseas, looking back at the regrets that you have made. We understand that the scope is smaller than you would like to make it, and it's probably communal, but we think that it's important for you as an individual to feel remembered, to help these people that matter in your life. This is true because even if you help all the people in the world, but it's not the people who you see face to face within your home country, the people you see suffering from the get go, that's probably not going to matter to you. This is why influencers who are super, super rich feel unhappy with their life because they don't come like have the happiness that they want to get from the people that matter to them the most. But lastly, we think oppositions cannot say that we feel burnt out because of the immense amount of suffering that exists, exactly because at the end of the day, we are probably a rational human being who understands how much change you can make. This is why you should vote for team opposition, team opening government.
Thank you, PM. Now calling LO here.
Hello, am I audible?
Audible.
Prepping for my timer. POI to purple. But please have mercy. Starting my Stone Badger. Hold on. Starting my speech in 3, 2, One, we are one among many. We never choose to be born. Mobilizing the community is currently impossible. We are not siding with the majority, and also we don't belong to the minority group, so we cannot mobilize anyone. We cannot get and grasp into the issues of the even on the underground. Going abroad is not only bliss, but peace and stability, and ultimately completely justifies. Two things we need to recontextualize or model. Number one, I think that we have responsibility also to the family. For example, probably we are also sandwich generations, and moreover, important to note that we have a long-awaited dreams to go to other countries, and we have the opportunities to get there because we already like invest so much in this thing. But secondly, we are not completely abandoning them. Probably in the future, when we already get the education or probably get the economic leverage outside of the countries, we can still voicing out our concern in other countries like petitions, etc., or even go back to our nations as someone with greater impact at the end of the day, right? To respond to this against OG, right? Number one, they say the dream of helping communities is also immense. But secondly, I will rebut about local, most likely you'll become a local worker and no impact. Okay, about the dream of helping your communities. Number one, doing virtuous thing to your people is a job that is so hard. It needs a same level gratitude and same level, resilience at the end of the day. And you will face a lot of adversity inside of your countries because consider conditions in your countries that is systematically oppressing you and the views that you adopt. This is things that need so much effort at the end of the day. I will utilize this context more in my argument. But secondly, I think that we can still co-opt this. Even from abroad, individuals can continue to advocate for marginalized group through social media, through petitions and support for relevant organizations, building network and cooperations, like building connections with like-minded individuals and organizations that can amplify one's voice and create opportunities for collective actions. For example, in other countries, probably the issues about your particular countries is really small, and you are becoming an academia there, and you're able to voice out the issues about your countries. You are able to bring about these issues in your countries. Like for
Closing.
example, several academics, Bangladeshi academics, for example, that exist in UK, talks about the current oppression of Sheikh Hasina regimes in the UK, for example, right? That's why the issues becomes more internationalized. This is what we expect. But secondly, also local worker, no impact. Two things. Number one, no, probably you already plan out your educations, realizing that this is your life goals, garner information about the countries and strategically decide which countries actually suits you and probably going to make you success inside of that countries. You probably also plan the study plan whatsoever, and you are also having a enough mental energies to grind and to be successful in this regard. But secondly, again, you can create impact abroad also, like for example, the utility of connections and the prestigiousness of university inherently bring you leverage and bargaining power, like the Belfa, for example, who become the CEO of Ruang Guru, for example, and simply become, for example, like um, Instagrammable and become influencer, for example. We think this is inherently gives you a leverage because of the university name and whatsoever, right? But two arguments then. First argument, basic things why fundamentally you have a duty to yourself, and second argument, the leverage going to another country, right? The duties to oneself then. Few things. The core argument here is that individuals have a primary obligations to ensure their own well-being, and living in hostile environment that actively undermine their identity and potential constitutes a breach of self-care. Few nuances right here. Firstly, about mental and emotional health. This is within our innate interest to aspire to go to another countries since child. It means two conclusions. Number one, you already invest so much, you already studying so much, you're already preparing for meeting new culture, for example, and voicing out your country's issues there. For example, you already know what to do right there, and probably you're already planned enough. But secondly, if you are not mentally fulfilled on the comparative sides, you are probably not going to be able to create impact anyway. You're probably having a second guessing and whatsoever. Like for example, because inherently to be facing discrimination and whatsoever, you need a mental resilience, but you are in a position of second guessing and whatsoever. Like for to face this, how is it so bad? In the condition, right? For example, like the backlash in internet, in Twitter, for example, or seeing bad government reign over you and make questionable policies. This is mentally draining, and we think you are not going to be able to create impact when the moment you are not mentally fulfilled. That's why in comparative, it's better because it brings you two things. Number one is personal growth. there are limitations imposed by oppressive regimes on the individual's aspirations and achievement, probably. And in other nations, probably you can already progress there better because the government is probably leftist and probably more inclusive. But secondly, is also risk assessment, right? You also
Opening.
analyze the potential dangers of remaining in country with a track record of human rights abuse, for example, ingrained corruption and structural issues within the countries. We think that it's better to leave these countries, right? But second layer, before that, sure.
No matter how much you want it, if it does not go well, you will regret your decision. All of your benefit is contingent on the success of an immigrant from a less rich country to a developed country.
Well, at the very least, the reason probably you go to other countries, probably not just because you are going to success there, but right there, you're probably getting, like-minded people, and meeting not like-minded people and so on and so forth. But secondly, under that premises that people are not probably getting, not you're probably not skilled enough to create impact there, then how you can create impact inside of your countries, which is ingrained with corruptions anyway, right? Secondly, why we don't have the moral obligation to the communities, right? Number one, very simple. We don't choose to be born here, suffering in the middle of corrupt and conservative government. But secondly, also we have direct responsibilities to your problems. For example, survivability of your families, and probably you're still sandwich generations. Again, you are having a direct problem in your life that you owe to solve. And lastly, I think that your capacity is limited. We probably have the qualities and resources to mobilize
Before
our
6.
people. No, to mobilize people. But other than that, probably we're not also belong to any of the elite groups, for example. So probably your capacity is very, very limited. On a quick note on the second argument, by living the countries, an individual can acquire the necessary knowledge and platform to become a more effective advocate for marginalized group. As a middle class, you are trapped. You cannot get scholarship because you are not really that poor, and you cannot get personal finance. That's why moving to other countries bring you skill acquisitions, networking, resource mobilizations. That is so much more higher. I'm very proud to oppose.
DPM.
Yep, hadir. Trigger warning, this will talk about several sensitive things, including my grandparents' experience back during 65. And also shout out, Amanda has been into an open grand final twice. This is like an amazing experience for her. Starting in 3, 2, 1. The death of an individual does not happen when the body decomposes. It happens when nobody is left there to remember you and your legacy. To live and to continue living throughout the legacies and memories shared by the communities impacted by your action means living. Do, do raise hand or chat, please. Is how you continue live is what the a priori benefit for all individual beings. Going abroad amidst the turmoil of the 21st century will most likely leads you becoming only to the cog in the machine and nobody, just another diasporan worker. After all things that have failed, the economy, the politics, the alt-right wing rising throughout the world, there's no way the benefit that OG tries to claim that you will get network, you will get lots of money, you will get power, and so on and so forth, can be manifested like what OG has failed to do so. There are limits on what diasporas can do abroad. A state will naturally prioritize their citizens over diasporas. Everyone there is settled. Nobody needs your help. Your help is utilitarian but never as meaningful as helping the discriminated kid go to college or strive through the day. Your help and contribution when you go abroad will extremely be limited. I'm going to have 3 points in my speech, but moving forward, I just want to point out there are several things that are redundant from LO speech. Number one, when they talk about we don't have obligations, the bird lottery arguments, and so on and so forth. Look, the info slide says you, despite this and the fact that you are only middle class, you are living as a progressive individual. It means you learn by experience that there are certain privileges that you got coming from the expense of others, coming from the expense of the marginalized community. And that means you, to certain extent, like all of us here shared, realizes that there are certain responsibilities that is responsibilities coming from that privileges, and that is what it means to be progressive by definition, and hence you can disregard this part of the arguments. Secondly, let's talk about how they talk about, oh, but we can be academicians, we can do social media petitions. The things that you can do remotely there can be done here as well. So what's the point? Moving forward, what do we have told you? Staying here means 10 more families impacted by your actions. As simple as becoming the ordal for them to get their KTP is already life-changing for the marginalized community, let alone becoming helping them to climb the social ladder, as small as it may be. My grandparents remembered the calo who helps them akta ganti nama when they don't even have KTP when they come here. They remember the one who give them martabak when they are hungry, for example. Can you just go abroad and send them the money or post it on social media? They are not only hungry, they are actively being disenfranchised through and through. Your presence is more than what your Instagram and TikTok post can provide them. You are there for the emotional and physical support is more than what your money and impact them. And looking from the perspective of the marginalized community, looking at some random diasporas posting, hey, please help this marginalized community while they are living abroad, making coffee from pot in their living in the good life in Texas, for example. That is called disattachment. I don't think we like that. I think we will call them out. We will at the very least feel wary whether or not they're being, tone deaf, for example, or they're being detached. Hey, f you for posting all of that while at the same time you're living on your throne, for example. That are the sentiments that are present during abroad. Your contributions will be meaningless under this regards, right? But yes, ultimately, networks, academia, social media, there are limits on these contributions. Social media is difficult when you are detached. Academic doesn't shape the policy quick enough for the survivability of community around you. The network is not sustainable. When push come to shoves, these networks will prioritize themselves when they are facing adversities, for example. But yeah, ultimately, the contributions is much bigger if you want to weigh in terms of how much impact you can make for these people. But what is needed is when your community is for you to be there to give them the hope for them to live another day. But yeah, I say the impact can be huge. As part of privileged individuals, you have bigger power. You have easier access to get into policy making jobs. If not, perhaps you have privileged circles you can talk and sway to. Convince them to vote certain way. Perhaps do not vote for certain candidates, but certain candidates instead. Gathering donations from their privileged money, for example. The snowball effect that may lead into another minority family living, another family surviving through the day, or even, who knows what their child will be in the future, right? The impact is important because ultimately this is what immortalizes your life and your legacy. And let's talk about fulfillment before six. Closing if you have anything. Six. The gravity of fulfillment is different than the fulfillment you may receive going abroad. Pursuing personal goals have no limit. Let's assume the best case that suddenly you become a C-level on NVIDIA, for example. You will feel mediocre by the next 3 months because ultimately you feel like you are contributing to nothing. The constant cycle of capitalism will put you, feeling mediocre over and over. Personal goals are dynamic and ever changing anyway. Your life goals now may be different with what you wished last year based on life experiences that you accumulated and highly likely to change anyway once you tried contributing to the local community. The burnout and the feeling of existential dread of having your contribution so marginal it's impactless when you go to a stranger's land and work a white collar job there. It's different compared to the altruistic fulfillment when people appreciate you for your contribution in their life, or even the selfish fulfillment, the ego boost, the social status amongst your circle when actually helping people in a meaningful way. The fulfillment, both altruistic and selfish reasons, is there. It has to be now because the community you have connections with may no longer be survived because who knows what the regime will do against them when you go back, right? For all of these reasons, please stay.
Thank you, DP. I'm now calling BLO here.
Check, am I audible?
Audible.
Sorry, I think my connection is a little bit laggy, so I'm going to try to talk 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Is that audible? No laggy?
It's okay, it's audible.
All right, cool. So for POI, I guess through chats, I guess. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. I guess OG forgets that this debate takes in the country where there's a discriminative regime, which means that the moment you are supporting the minority that is oppressed by regime, you're putting yourself in the danger too. I think this is a very important characterization that never comes in opening government because they simply want a survivability and this warmth feeling for the community without actually manifesting what kind of how then the dynamic of we trying to saving this community will go look like. I think that doing questionable things like forging a birth certificate is really out of question. Moreover, if you're giving them to the minority community, because you're going to just be exposing yourself to illegal means, which means also putting yourself as a criminal level. I don't think that is something favorable for you, even as a middle class, because as a middle class, you are also facing structural problems that is completely different with minority communities. For instance, in a lot of terms, you are not someone who is favorable by the society. You are not those poor people that gets government aid and affirmative action scholarship, for instance. You are not also the rich people that have safety fund, which means that you are all left behind on yourself to actually save and make your own life, which means that in order for you to survive and to actually maintain your life and your whole being, you only have yourself, which means the only way for us to survive and to actually reach our long life goal, we should leave the country. But all of my rebuttals are going to be integrated in my extensions. I have 2 extensions here. Number 1, why it's okay to be selfish. Number 2, talking about why is it not a vision at all for us to just to save the community. First of all, why is it okay to be selfish? The first thing that I want to posit is that my safety matters the most. If I will be captured by government or labeled as criminal, the question is, will the community bail me out? No, because we are more or less a stranger to them. Even if we are going to create a bond or something like that, I don't think this community is going to have the capital or bargaining position to bail me out from the prison, for instance, because they are in the position of oppression as well. But if I become shunned down by my own community, by my own family and friends, because we will likely live in the middle of conservative society, which means that our family and friends also likely to not support this group, will I still advocate to the communities I say no because I sacrificed my well-being for for the minority communities, but all I got is harm instead. I will be hated by all my surroundings. I will likely resent the community, and this is likely because emotion is volatile and easily changed, right? Means that maybe one day, because I only support them from far, I support them fully, but when I actually engage and I got harm instead, but I don't have any kind of achievement, I will just resent them instead because they make me suffer throughout the advocacy. But B, the community never asked me to sacrifice my own life, given that I am not part of them as well, right? That means they are not morally obligated, nor will feel the need to compensate for my loss. They are already busy enough now to fight and struggle, and they have no space to cater to my expectations. We think that these are the contexts that will likely to manifest if we are going to stay in our country, which means that the comparative is unlikely. But moreover, we are already too long entrapped in a culture where you have to give back to the family or community. And we think that this is the only, to go abroad means that this is the only opportunity for you to be totally prioritize yourself. We are likely to not get this chance again in the future because this is the kind of offer that usually once in a lifetime. I'm going to utilize the context of given the opportunity to go abroad means that you have some kind of guarantee in the life of abroad, which means that maybe you get a scholarship, maybe you get a job already or whatever, because it means that the opportunity of life abroad, which means that there is an opportunity for you to be able to live there. But why then success is likely even for a migrant workers? This is also to preempt any kind of argument from closing government that wants to talk about the opportunity for success. Firstly, I think that community of your people, like for example PPI Dunia or whatever, also there in other states, and I think that this will create a tangible network and also even give you the opportunity to have a job that prioritize foreign worker, for instance. But secondly, more importantly, more companies are looking for more foreign workers. This works in three things. Number one, countries like Japan, who has population decrease, that also prioritize foreign workers because they don't have high future for their population as well, and they are actually giving social and health insurance even for these foreign workers. Secondly, we think that developed countries where companies are leading to more progressive policies to hire minorities. But lastly, also there are countries that value migrant workers simply because they are cheaper compared to locals. And I don't think this is a job that only reserved for blue collar workers, but also even those who are in corporate jobs. But even if so, that this is only reserved for blue collar workers. We think those are the kickstart of our journey in the abroad as well, and we think that even the opportunity and the experience will be valuable. But sure, I will bite the bullet that we might not be happy, that we might be struggling, but we might have second thought. But what is better is that at the very least, we can accept that this is our lifelong dream, and a future that we want to achieve. I think that these are the part of journey of
Is it just me
are the
or
part of journey of how we are developing as an individual as well. And I hello, hello.
yeah? You were choppy. You are 5 minutes and 49 seconds now.
All right. Where did I get cut?
You're explaining why it is fine if you're struggling or not happy. Starting from that point, you were choppy.
Circle is not happy. Oh yeah. All right. All right. I will say. So is this audible? Is this okay?
Yeah, it's audible.
All right. Resuming my speech in three, two, one. Sure, you might have second thought, but at the very least, the comparative is that you will not regret much because you have to understand that this is our lifelong dream and a future that we want to achieve. I think that breakdown and sadness is okay, and struggling is fine because that's our normal, and those are part of our development as an individual. But the thing is, you are not going to struggle by the fact that it's caused by a community that you might get resent for, but all of the suffering is consented by you, that you are going to face the suffering so that you can achieve your lifelong goal. That's why I think that in the comparative, it's very fine for us to eventually prioritize ourselves. But a little bit of clarification as well. I think that progressive doesn't mean that you're obligated to save people. I think even the fact that we don't oppress and we accept minorities as human beings is enough in the context of a country, a conservative country that is highly repressive, that has highly repressive regime. So that means that takes the progressive context out of question. So a quick second argument talking about why this is not efficient. Remember that we are facing discriminative regime, which means there is a structural oppression, like norm or law that subject minority activities to crime, or like fulfillment that can only be, and we think that this is not likely. But second, we are not one that able to mobilize community because we are neither a rich person that can funding an organization nor a member of community that can relate to them, which means that it's hard for us to get as individual to mobilize the community, which means that this is not also likely. That's why I'm very proud to speak in grand final. Thank you.
Thank you, Dia. Oh, opening for House, calling member Bakuhantam here now.
Okay, hold on, give me 1 second. There. POIs through unmuting yourself. I don't think I'll be looking at chat at all. Stop hating Hezron. Dia private message ako. Okay. Going to start in 3, 2, 1. Let me frame this debate as how it is meant to be. This debate is not an analysis on how bad versus how good life could be as a social activist versus as an international student. Both lives will have its ups and downs, but this debate warrants you to make a decision. The way you justify a decision is an analysis on likelihood of you regretting your decision and you thinking that you made the wrong choice, right? Because an analysis of possible outcome does not matter unless you are able to convince to me why I will be satisfactory with that outcome. Two metrics in to be able to prove this that closing government will give you. First, being able to go through hard times, and secondly, being able to appreciate the good times. Note, OG does a bit in the first one by saying that they will be happy when they go to university, but does not explain, or they will be happy when they are able to help people and people are able to smile, but does not explain why what happens to you in a psychological level to the point where it eliminates any form of regret, to the point where you're satisfied seeing their smiles, and what the comparative is. You cannot justify a decision by proving the likely outcome of the decision. You justify it by ensuring satisfaction from the outcome. An OIV would give CG the win. 3 responses to OO before I go on. Firstly, their whole case is only debating, should a stereotypical middle class majority move outside or become a social warrior? You cannot buy this case because this does not take into account the motion slide or the context slide. Because we know from the context slide is A, the kid is an SJW, but secondly, the kid wants to help people as well. Therefore, I do think all analysis in opening opposition is just not per the debate. Secondly, they assume diaspora will live a good life. There is no likelihood of explanation, right? Because all of it is just ifs. If you are able to integrate to a PPE, if you have a community outside there, if you are able to get a job, if you are able to get a good house there. I'll prove you later why even if this all comes true, the degree of happiness that you receive from this is exponentially less because of the decision you made. But thirdly, there's no burden in government to prove why we will change the system, right? I'm going to prove to you why the decision is a satisfactory decision despite us not creating structural change. One big extension in closing government. Life is better when you have a clear purpose. Staying will give you a clear purpose and a goal that gives you constant feedback. 3 points. Firstly, The moments of happiness does not come from seeing discrimination abolished, but it comes from the weekend you spend to go to a food shelter and feed the kids, seeing on how these people has been pushed by the cruelty of the world, conditions you would think that God does not even allow, and they respond with a smile for the food you gave them, and you did not even make it. It comes from those people that has been silenced, suffocated by the chains of humanity, and taking their first breath, crying, shouting of the unfairness of the world and of the state. The moment you listen to them and you realize that you might have listened to hundreds of people grievances, but they only had one person listening to them, and that person is you. This explains that you realize that the source of happiness is not only when you are able to create structural change, but it's the every single day you take a step there. It's the every single individual that you try to help achieving this dream. It's every single kid that you talk to, and it's every single adult that cries to you. These are your moments of happiness. These are where you get the justifications to your decision. Notice how the sustainable and constant positive feedback is what drives you in saying that I do not regret making my decision. The moment you go out of the country, all hell breaks loose. 3 points. Firstly, you were tricked by the advertisements that life abroad would be fine. You are then shocked that not being able to speak in your language is so depressing. Having glaring eyes at you every time you say, sorry, I can only speak English is depressing. Because the ideal life that all of us here understand of a life abroad is all made by advertisement companies, is all made by housing companies outside, trying to gain extra immigrants to be able to have cheap labor outside, right? Unless you're able to explain to me on why there is a high degree of likelihood that your life outside as a person that has not lived there, does not understand the customs there, and does not even have an ID card that would give you access to healthcare, education, and social welfare, I don't think you can prove to me on why your life there would be good. But you're also not able to enjoy the highs of life. What made my break in Worlds worth it was being able to see Ka Omar crying for me and Ka Daud also hugging me after that. Being able to see Ko Andre run from his tab duties to congratulate all of us. The value of proximity and comfortability is priceless. The highs in life are only precious because we were programmed ever since we were small, that it was something to celebrate. Your first birthday meant something, not because you made a rotation around the sun, but because your parents was there, because your parents told you that it is special. Because your friends were there to celebrate with you. Your experiences is in life is only relevant when the people around you that make it worth it is there to do. What happens is opposition is your first job, your achievement, it becomes empty. You are not able to enjoy this with your family. The education that you have tried to prove to your father that I am actually someone to be proud for, and the moment you get that job, you're not able to show it to him. You're only able to call him. I cried the night that I won an UBC because after my senior shut down the call, it was silent. I was not able to be there to talk to my parents, nor was I able to talk to Tata that, hey, we suffered a lot, and nor was I able to celebrate with my friends. It was me for 2 months after winning with no one congratulating me offline. I don't want the kid to go through this. And thirdly, you are less able to go through hard times. Notice that the choice you made by staying means you sacrificed something that is for the bigger good. Going outside makes you selfish. It makes you a coward. This means every time things do go wrong, you're able to fool yourself that you were still the bigger person. And also, things are meant to go wrong. You cope because you know that you made the risky decision. If things go wrong, you're able to say they were meant to go wrong. The moment you go outside and things do go wrong, you start questioning yourself because supposedly you made the rational decision to go outside. Supposedly you made the calculated decision, but why are things still fucking up? Why am I not getting a job? Why am I not able to be there with my family and be happy? These are the things that you think in making decisions. These are the moments that you regret making your decisions. So in a debate that talks about the justification of making a decision, you ought to prioritize whether or not you would regret it. CG proves this to you.
Thank you, member government. Now calling member opposition. Here.
Okay, hello, am I audible? Is it like loud enough?
Yeah, audible.
Thank you. Gender pronoun, she or her. Trigger warning, I may be talking about some topics that would somewhat generalize a certain group. I tried my best not to generalize anything. So yeah, if anyone feels offended or anything, I'm sorry. Okay. So oh yeah, POI through just directly unmute. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. What government actually needs to explain is two things. First, just because you're part of the majority, why is it automatically means that you're obligated to help, which is inherently very unjust, right? First, why does it need to be your own individual responsibility when it's the government's fault, when it's the other people's faults and it's external fault? Why should those responsibility be put upon you, and why should you bear the burden of those things when you didn't even choose to be born to be the majority? First, you didn't choose to be born in the country, to be born in a time where this discriminative regime is currently in power, right? You did not ask to be born to be part of the majority. You live for who you are. You did not choose to be born. At least you need a choice to live your life to however you want, not because your value is put upon because you help people. Why is this then very bad? First, there's the inherent logic that you know internally, right? And by staying, you're made to feel guilty because you did not help, because you cannot help, because you do not have enough resource to help as much people as possible. OG says that if you help 10 people, it's okay. No, they're going to demand you to help more and more. They want you to actually help to the better cause, to help them from the ground up, to change policies and all those big things. And because worse it is then worse on their side because your help would not ever be enough. You're an individual of middle class that does not have those enough resources to do that at the very first place. But aside from that, governments also need to explain on how it would be effective to fulfill your sort of like happiness or fulfillment, or how your advocacy can somewhat happen even marginally, and how this does it not harm the individuals and the people around them. First, why is it very inherently very harmful for you? A, you're putting yourself and your family and your loved ones in danger because this is a discriminative regime, which means all people have a strong bias against this marginalized community. Things like violence can easily happen. The community are also discriminating you. When you have this marginalized community, you're also then being ostracized from all of those communities at the end of the day. You're putting yourself in dangerous conditions. You're joining riots, advocating for those changes, actively going against the government's principle at the end of the day. But even if you're not doing all of those big things, or you're just helping your neighbor, etc., for example, you when you start and say that you are someone that's progressive towards those people, towards the people around you, towards your community, and you want to help this marginalized community at the end of the day, the harassment, threats, and intimidation, and the pressure to you, your family, and your friends that associates you to helping these minorities will exist at the end of the day. If you need to help other people, will you at the end be fulfilled if you put yourself, your family, and your loved one in dangers in order to help all these communities that you don't even know about, right? We show to you that even if these minorities are inherently someone that needs help, it is not your own obligation to do so. It is not your obligation to actually help them, especially when you don't even have the capacity or even have the amount of resource to do so. And
POI?
secondly, why is it not effective? Later, I'll take it at 5. Why it's not effective? A, you have limited economical resource. First, you need to sustain this for a long time, right? Because for change in values, you need to sustain it for a long time in order for it to change from the root, right? You need to fund for campaigns, legal fees, or even while you need to still need to live to pay for your basic living expenses because you're middle class, is barely just getting by, you still need to work, etc. Even further, why would the people or the community around you who are the majority that have a strong bias against this marginalized or minorities that are part of the majority will let you at the end do that? Why would the government let you do that? Best case scenario, your family or your friends can help you like OG wants, but how could you as an individual put your families and friends in danger like that? And then secondly, on why politically and socially you do not have the bargaining power to even make the slightest change. Because firstly, with this power at the end of the day, you do not have the advocacy or the networks enough for you to actually do that in the very first place, right? So you then neglect all of your personal fulfillment for the sacrifice of yourself. You sacrifice your own well-being and the people around you for the sake of helping these people, right? What is then on our side better? First, because we let these people fulfill their dreams at the very first place. This motion clearly states that you already have a longing to actually fulfill your dreams to go outside of the country. So that in itself means it's already a huge consideration and it's mutually exclusive, right? This means that the choices that you make, if this the justification right here is that you already made all of the necessary counting for the risk and etc in order for you to do this, right? But why is this then very important? Because fulfilling your dreams is probably a one-time chance. This is a unique opportunity for pursuing your dreams. It often involves seizing this unique opportunity that may not come around again, right? This is once in a lifetime chance that profoundly impact your future in itself. Then you fail to take advantage of such opportunities, this leads to long-term regret. Like what they said, like, oh, you regret because you cannot be somewhere good. No, you regret because you didn't do it at the very first place, right? Whereas on our side, advocacy and all of that needs to be done by the government to actually make the change. And you internalize that. You understand that you're someone who doesn't have that capacity at the end of the day. Why should you bear the burden to do so, right? And then secondly, because you're someone of progressive value, you're living in a world or in a country that is constantly tramping you down because you're someone that's progressive. When you start to spread around that you're someone that wants to help the marginalized community, you're now part of the marginalized community because the people will see you as someone that tries to help them at the end of the day. Whereas when you go outside, you can find a place that shares your value, you move to a place that aligns with your value and beliefs, creating a more supportive and fulfilling environment for you as well. And what they say, like, oh, companies don't want to hire you, etc. First, they want a huge pool of participants at the very first place, so they would not shun you to not work there. As long as you have the merit, they conduct merit-based selection for you to actually be able to work there at the end of the day, even if it's an entry-level job. But at least you go out of there, you fulfill your dreams, and you do not have to bear those burden at the end of the day. This then more guaranteed for you to be happy because firstly, you are the responsibility of yourself. Your responsibility and your value is dependent on you succeeding, not dependent on the community actually being saved by you or not. Proud to oppose.
Thank you, member opposition. Now calling government whip. Here.
Check audible.
Audible.
Right. Yeah. Sharing speech 3. Oh, sorry. PI pref through chat box. Only chat box. Starting speech 3, 2, 1. The moment when CO comes and challenge CG by saying what is actually, you don't actually have the responsibility, is the moment that CG has already win the debate. COOO is already failed to actually understand the debate. We want to make this decision. It's not a third person debate where we force this person to fix the issue. It's a first person POV motion. What would we rather do? Is it okay if I take the study abroad, or is it okay if I took my if I took these chances for me to like actually give myself up to the marginalized people? It does not matter if it's not fair. We would prefer to help, to mean something when it didn't matter, as opposed to live when it did. But before I move, responses to OO, 3 responses. 1, who says that, all right, you could go study abroad, like, living in your like best case scenario, like living in your, good life, for example, living abroad, and you can voice out those issues as if like you're a hero trying to save up some people being marginalized at your own country that is being oppressed by the regimes, as if you are a hero. You're showing up at the social media, showing as, oh, I am a hero, I'm trying to save my marginalized people, without moving any practical actions, while people being marginalized in your area are still starving, did not get any subsidies from the government, and etc. Voicing out issues while you're not there isn't changing a person's perspective. Especially the majority itself, you're even going to be hated more, because people will think that you're on the omdo, for example, because you're talking from your apartment in Dubai, for example, because you're talking from your apartment in Texas, for example. You're not creating a practical impact which will triggers more hatred for yourself, simply because people will think that you're only omdo. But practical benefit for minorities is something needed, especially in a highly oppressing area for marginalized people, simply because they did not have those kind of practicality, simply because they only need food. You only have to spend like 10,000 rupees to buy foods for those marginal peoples, for example. That is the only thing that they are needed right now at the current status quo, because it is the very urgent issues to be discussed or to be solved by yourself, simply because you know that they are being marginalized because of the government. Because of the government's regime, it's very oppressing those kind of minorities. But two, this is part of self-care. Like you should be care of yourself and etc. Yada yada. This was driven by social standard. Imagine that your goals has been created since you are in high school. You wanted to go abroad because, like, your family talk to you like, you should go abroad because, yeah, our neighbor has went abroad, for example, and etc. I know that these goals doesn't come far from your inside heart. These goals doesn't come because you wanted to do it, but because the social standard, because you're living in privileges, you're living as majority, you are being shaped to be like that. You're being shaped to, like, make yourself to be rich, make yourself to go study abroad, make yourself to be success as the standard of according to the standard of, like, the social standards, for example. I think this is the biggest mistakes. Why then you should not have, like, taken the options of go studying abroad, simply because it is not what you want, but it is what the peoples want, and it creates your mindset to be like that. I think happiness in social standard is like when you're studying abroad, or when you're driving Ferrari, when you're becoming PNS, or having lots of money. As someone that is middle income, I think it is more than enough for you to actually strive for more money. You don't have to strive for more money simply because you are middle income and etc. I think when you're trying to go on arguments like, what if you're sandwich generation and etc. I think it's like special cases and etc. So don't buy their cases at the very first place. But yeah, reaching out for more money, more and more and more money doesn't actually, like, instantly make you happy, simply because when you get money, when you can buy 100 million cars, makes you very happy. But later, then, when you can buy 1 million cars, the amount of happiness, the amount of dopamine injected inside your brain is not as much as when you get your first 100 million cars at the very first, simply because you have already felt that. And that is the thing that will always happen under opposition side. Under our side, you will feel every emotions combined into one, mixed into one feelings. The happiness of you giving food to them, the sadness when you see them crying because they are starving, for example. Simply that is the thing that only exclusive under closing government. But three, you're putting yourself in danger too, they say. It's okay, I guess. People did still, many white people did still support black people in US, even if they should fight the police. And the way Black Lives Movement could slow down and slowly stopping the racism and discrimination creates happiness to its fighter, for example, simply because they know that they have fight for the minorities. They have fight for the black people, for example, simply because white people that is progressive enough know that they have already succeeded, for example. But this is not our, we're not talking about this actually, but we're talking about how you individually will, like, feel happy rather than you are, studying abroad, that you feel happiness by your own. But this looks like a university student who sacrifices their safety to fight for farmers' rights, even if they didn't have any correlation with farming. But why? One, as a progressive and educated people, you have the feeling, you have the idealism to actually fight or protect the weak ones simply because you know that you are privileged one. But two, this is a form of fight back of the evil regime to at least slowing down their types of oppressions. Because the way people or government would actually having a considerations of the marginalized people is when the majority is already speaking about it, is when the majority is already taking care about it. Moving to CO. CO is like this, two responses. One, why is it your part of responsibility challenged by CO? I don't think you are given the responsibility of your by someone, for example, but you are taking the responsibility because you are progressive enough, because you know that they are suffering enough, because you know that deep in your heart you wanted to help them. But two, how it will be effective? A, it is symmetrical. It's not effective when you're studying abroad where while you are a middle income. You will not get like as much subsidized as low income people, for example, or you will not you're not having much money as high income people, for example. It is symmetrical when you're asking about how it is effective. But why is it more effective under CG? At least under CG, the moment you could help one or two people, the moment you could help your neighbor, shows that you're effective enough in your life goals, shows that you're effective enough in helping people. Simply because all of those reasons, CG is the champion.
Thank you, Government Whip. To close the whole debate, calling opposition whip here.
Am I audible?
Audible.
Okay, Jennifer, now share her POI, just directly unmute yourself. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Let's first kick OG out of this entire debate, right? Because I think their entire case is very uncomparative. They say that going abroad is hard, therefore you shouldn't do it. First of all, read the motion, right? Because the motion literally states, given the opportunity to leave, which means it's already a fiat to assume that there is economical capital to mobilize. You have all of the necessary documents to leave. There's a prospect that you already considered for so long after you leave the state, i.e., where do you want to live, where do you want to get a job, which job do you want to take, and so on. But secondly, then, here's also the huge logic gap that I don't understand from OG's case. They say if you are an immigrant, you get discriminated. If you are a middle class society who goes abroad, you cannot get a job and you will be homeless. First of all, if you're given the opportunity to leave the state, why would you even choose to move to a country that poses that huge of a discrimination to immigrants, right? Why would you choose to go to a country that has very low job vacancies? Because firstly, your goal here is to improve your life trajectory, not to expose yourself to the harms of an incompetent foreign government that creates a lot of failure and a lot of issues inside that certain country, right? So obviously, if you know that you cannot compete in the US, for example, then you wouldn't go to the US. You would go to other countries that will give you the benefit of getting good education, of getting a good job, and etc. But secondly, then, my member has already told you as well that companies also still have the incentive to select workers meritocratically. There are still incentive for them to select these people from a large pool of selection. Therefore, it's not exclusive to their side to just help these locals. If there are any other if any, I think there's a lot of other companies inside the country and jobs that you can apply to. Therefore, I think their harm is way too extreme to directly assume that, oh, these middle class individuals will directly become homeless if you go abroad. But secondly, then, even if there is risk of failure, we think at the very least the act of leaving the state is already enough to fulfill your dream. Because if you do not choose to leave the country, you cannot get any of the benefits of mobility, immigration, and etc. This contribution alone is already enough to put us above OO because they never prove to you any positive case for why going abroad can be better. It is only mechanized on CO. But furthermore, then, OG comes up and says that diasporas are being disadvantaged. Look, literally under your side of the house, it's the same thing, right? You're also a middle-class individual. You're not as privileged as other types of people. Their only privilege is your identity is a majority. But here's why OG's entire benefit of helping the minorities will also not happen, because I think my member has already proven to you several reasons why it is unlikely that you have the capacity to do so. Firstly, because I think as a normal middle-class citizen, economically, you do not have enough money because you're just a middle-class individual. You do not struggle financially, sure, but if you want to help all minorities, like what OG tells you, that investment is extremely large. The likelihood of success then becomes extremely small or even non-existent, exactly because they never mechanize to you which type of help are you going to provide to the people, how are you going to help the people, and what are the chances of likelihood as well. Secondly, then, I think politically and socially, you also do not have enough bargaining power, because who are you to change the regime, right? The entire discrimination towards the people still exists. The entire harm towards minorities are still there for these people to actually experience as well, because you do not have that power to do so. Thirdly, then, if any, I think advocating for support also exposes yourself or even your family to consistent threat of personal danger. This is more urgent than OO's entire argument that says you're also struggling. CO gives you a way larger urgency that tells you that when you're engaging in activism, for example, adds in the danger that you or your family are able to receive. This is likely because when you're actively going against the government by starting a riot, for example, contesting the government, calling out the government's failure, advocating for minority rights that are not populist, and most of the time, you're going to be the target for why government would want to harm you, for example, right? This is symmetrical to how, when there are whistleblowers or journalists who criticize the government, maybe the next day you're already gone, you're not going to be there anymore. So even if GovBench wants to argue that the harm is not certain, we think insofar as retrospectively there can be a risk towards these individual or towards your family, it is already justifiable for you to leave, for you to prioritize your own interests and go abroad. Because OG and CG's entire urgency about helping minorities is not exclusive when you know that you can also still donate to causes, for example. You can still help from a lot of external platforms if being a social justice warrior is exactly what you think is ethically important. But secondly, then, flipping CG's entire contribution and their extension about the process is what matters, on the outcome of advocacy, because they do have the burden to prove why there is a chance of success, or else why would helping the children, why would helping the minority now even matters if it means in the future they will still be oppressed by the government, for example, right? We think, if any, self-blaming is going to be even worse on their side in instances where you do fail, or when you cannot help that much of, like, the quantity of people that you can help on their side is very low. So, two reasons for this. Firstly, because I think if there is regret, it's worse on their side, because you will always think about how you didn't contribute enough to help the children's, you didn't do enough to uplift the minority, you weren't attentive enough when the minority children's are being held down by the entire discriminative regime. Because your help is never going to be good enough, because you didn't get to change the entire system. You can't help a lot of people in their side of the house. If they want to tell you that, oh, at the very least, we still try to help the people, we can still help one or two people at the end of the day. However, if you can see that the collective grievances that minorities are going through are still extremely large in their side of the house, I don't think you can feel that fulfillment. You cannot feel happy when you know that there's still a lot of people who are in dire needs of help. And if you admit that you are a social justice warrior, I don't think you can feel happy on their side. Secondly, then, unfortunately, even if you are the hero that reforms the regime or help the minorities escape those discrimination, even if OG and CG never proves to you the likelihood, sure, it's still going to be bad, because apparently no one cares, right? I don't think even CG can mention one single middle-class individual who has already helped minorities in a discriminative regime. Not only do they get no pragmatic benefits of helping the minority, but even the intangible benefits of validation or even appreciation does not exist. So not only do you fail to help the minorities on their side, we also proven to you why even if you succeed, you do not get the benefits that gives you the validation or the happiness that you're able to feel. So when you could have been, on the alternative, then you could have get the chance, you get the opportunity for you to become successful abroad, or at least live a greater life when you go abroad. This is instead then more haunting on their side, because humans inherently only focus on the negative things that happens to your life, and that sense of that feeling of regret is then way more overwhelming under CG's world. What do we prove to you then on CO, and why do you think we win in this entire debate? Because even if we don't help the minorities, if we are happy abroad, the collective emotion that you feel is still way better in CO. Secondly, if we fail, at least CO proves to you why the feeling of regret can be mitigated in multiple ways, therefore compensating for your negative emotion. But thirdly, we're also able to flip their entire analysis. We prove to you why staying inside the state gives you an even larger emotional burden, be it that you fail or you succeed inside helping the minorities. It is way more harmful for you as an individual at the end of the day. Opposed. Thank you.